There's a sound that just cracked through an empty proving ground, and it wasn't supposed to exist anymore. For years, the automotive world believed the Viper was gone for good, a name retired to memory, a chapter closed by regulation and changing priorities. Then whispers started circulating through engineering circles, the kind of quiet rumblings that precede something enormous. I'm Automotive Pulse, and what we're looking at today is not nostalgia dressed up in new sheet metal. This is a realistic projection of what a next-generation Dodge Viper could genuinely become if American engineering decided to finish a fight it never wanted to walk away from. Before we get into the number that's going to make purists argue in the comments, there's one decision buried inside this car's architecture that completely upends what people assumed a modern Viper had to be, and it has nothing to do with horsepower. Look at the stance first, because that's where the truth of this car lives before a single spark ever hits a cylinder. The proportions are long, low, and deliberately feral. A hood that stretches forward like it's hunting the horizon, and a cabin pushed back so far it feels like an afterthought bolted onto a weapon. That's not accidental. That's the same philosophy that built the original Viper, engineered around a front mid-platform where the driver sits practically on top of the rear axle, close enough to the road to feel every decision the chassis makes in real time. The projected design language keeps those aggressive double-bubble roof contours, not for retro theater, but because they genuinely solve helmet clearance for track-focused owners, a detail only a brand with real motorsport memory would bother preserving. The face is where things get controversial. Slim, blade-like LED signatures replace the old projector housings, carving a menacing squint rather than a friendly glare, and the front splitter now integrates functional dive planes rather than decorative ones. Every intake, every vent, every gap in the bodywork earns its place by pulling heat away from an engine bay that's going to need serious airflow. The wide fender flares aren't just visual aggression either. They house a significantly wider front and rear track, engineered to plant far more rubber on the road than the outgoing generation ever could. Carbon fiber isn't sprinkled on as jewelry here. It's structural, used across the hood, splitter, side skirts, and diffuser to keep curb weight from ballooning despite the added width and technology. Now to the decision that's going to spark real debate. Industry insiders and engineering analysts widely expect Dodge to stay loyal to a naturally aspirated architecture and spirit. But realistically, emissions requirements and the pursuit of usable, repeatable power make a modern approach almost unavoidable. The most plausible direction, and the one several powertrain engineers close to Stellantis programs have quietly pointed toward, is a twin turbocharged evolution of a V8 architecture, rather than chasing electrification for a car whose entire identity is built on mechanical honesty. Estimated output sits in a believable range between 900 and 1,000 horsepower, engineered specifically to keep the driving experience analog and threatening rather than sanitized by a hybrid buffer. This is the choice enthusiasts will fight about forever, because the old Viper's soul was built on a massive, naturally aspirated displacement, and moving to boosted induction feels like compromise to some and evolution to others. Both sides are right, and that tension is exactly why this car matters. Power routes through a projected rear-wheel drive layout, because a Viper with all-wheel drive stops being a Viper. A dual-clutch transmission is the most likely gearbox choice for a range-topping trim, engineered for brutal shift speed, though a traditional 6-speed manual is expected to remain available for the purists who still believe driving involves your left foot. Suspension philosophy leans toward adjustable magnetorheological dampers, allowing the car to shift from a startlingly composed daily character to something genuinely unhinged at the push of a button, without pretending it can hide its inherent aggression completely. Now close your eyes for a second and imagine the startup sequence, because this is where the emotional core of this machine lives. Turn the key, or more realistically, press the ignition button, and there's a half-second of mechanical hesitation before the engine catches, a deep, guttural cough that settles into an idle with real menace underneath it, not smoothed out for comfort. At idle, the exhaust note trembles rather than purrs, a subtle threat sitting just beneath the surface. Roll into the throttle, and the turbocharged V8 doesn't whistle politely. It builds pressure like something being restrained, then releases with a violent, chest-deep bark as boost comes online. The exhaust note under hard acceleration is layered and aggressive, closer to controlled destruction than refinement, with each gearshift landing as a sharp mechanical crack rather than a soft, muffled interruption. Inside the cabin, sound insulation is intentionally imperfect, engineered to let just enough of that raw mechanical violence bleed through, because total silence would betray everything this car is supposed to represent. At high RPM, the engine note sharpens into something almost desperate, an urgent physical intensity that makes your pulse match the tachometer whether you intend it to or not. Step inside, and the character completely shifts, because this is where Dodge's engineers are expected to prove the Viper can be lived with, not just survived. The door opens with real mechanical weight, no synthetic damping trickery, just honest heft. Drop into the seat, and you're immediately positioned low, thighs nearly level with the floor, knees bent like you're strapping into something built for a track rather than a boulevard. The steering wheel is smaller in diameter than expected, wrapped in genuinely tactile leather with subtle Alcantara inserts exactly where your palms naturally rest. Carbon fiber trim isn't glossy show car plastic here. It's matte, textured, purposeful. There's a faint scent of leather and machined metal, nothing synthetic pretending to be luxurious. Ambient lighting stays restrained, a subtle red glow tracing the dash rather than a distracting light show, because this cabin is meant to focus your attention forward, not entertain you. A crisp digital display integrates seamlessly into the dashboard, rather than sitting awkwardly on top of it, offering telemetry, lap timing, and drivetrain diagnostics without cluttering your sightline. Cabin silence at cruising speed is surprisingly composed for a car this aggressive, proving that Dodge's engineers likely prioritized long-distance usability alongside outright theater. Technology here isn't about overwhelming the driver, it's about quietly supporting them. Expect adaptive driver assistance systems that intervene only when genuinely necessary, over-the-air software updates that keep the car's electronics current for years rather than obsolete within months, and AI-assisted vehicle diagnostics that monitor drivetrain health in real time. Reassuringly, none of this technology intrudes on the driving experience itself. It simply exists in the background, ready if you need it, invisible if you don't. Now imagine the first real drive, because this is where projected engineering intent becomes something you can almost physically feel. Throttle response is immediate, no dead zone, no artificial delay, just instant mechanical honesty, translating your right foot directly into forward violence. Steering feel is heavier than most modern performance cars dare to offer, deliberately resisting the numb, overly assisted feeling that's plagued the segment for a decade. Brake pedal feedback is firm and progressive, communicating exactly how much stopping power remains in reserve rather than grabbing artificially at the top of travel. Through a corner, the chassis balance feels neutral and alert, weight transferring predictably rather than surprising you, the wider rear track keeping the tail composed even when you're deliberately testing its patience. Road texture transmits clearly through the seat and wheel, not harshly, but honestly. The kind of feedback that lets an experienced driver read the surface ahead before the car even reacts to it. In that first moment of real acceleration, there's a visceral, almost primal reaction, your chest tightening slightly as the exhaust note sharpens and the horizon starts arriving faster than your brain expected. Pricing estimates for a range-topping configuration are expected to land somewhere between $120,000 and $140,000. Positioning it well above the outgoing Viper's original window, but arguably fair territory considering the engineering complexity, materials, and performance capability involved. Is that genuinely worth it? Emotionally, yes, because buyers aren't just purchasing horsepower figures. They're purchasing a mechanical rebellion against an industry increasingly obsessed with silence and detachment. They're buying a piece of American manufacturing defiance, a nameplate that refuses to apologize for being loud, difficult, and demanding. That's not something you can quantify on a spec sheet. Positioned honestly, this isn't a segment disruptor, chasing lap times against European exotics, and it isn't a gentle legacy revival either. This feels like a modern American muscle icon reasserting itself with genuine engineering conviction. aimed squarely at drivers who never stopped believing raw, analog performance still has a place in a world drowning in electrified silence. This car was built for someone who still shifts gears manually out of principle, not necessity. Someone who values feeling every ounce of mechanical effort behind forward motion, who sees imperfection and difficulty as part of the reward rather than an inconvenience to be engineered away. It's for drivers who understand that comfort and character occasionally conflict, and who choose character every single time. To be honest about its limitations, this projected Viper likely sacrifices some everyday practicality, limited cargo space, a firm ride even in its softest setting, and genuinely demanding ergonomics that won't suit every driver. That's not a flaw hidden from view, it's an honest trade-off baked into its identity. Picture this car on an empty desert highway just outside sunrise. Heat still rising off asphalt from the day before. No traffic, no distractions, just mechanical tension building toward release. That's where this Viper feels spiritually correct, not crawling through city traffic, but stretched out across open American road with nothing left to prove except to itself. Before you go, here's a genuinely debatable question worth arguing about in the comments. Does a modern Viper lose its soul by adopting turbocharged power instead of staying naturally aspirated? Or does that evolution represent exactly the kind of engineering honesty this nameplate has always stood for? If you believe American performance still deserves this kind of unapologetic attention, subscribe to Automotive Pulse. Because we're only getting started, some cars ask to be respected. This one simply demands to be felt. This video is based on current automotive industry insights, publicly available information, engineering trends, and reliable market analysis available at the time of writing. All specifications, performance figures, pricing estimates, design details, and production timelines discussed are projections and realistic interpretations only. Nothing presented should be considered officially confirmed unless formally announced by Dodge or Stellantis.